Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, he has decided to retire next year. So it got me wondering, what would it take for a Republican to be able to win that U.S. Senate seat? That's what we're going to take a look at today. Here's the news. Cardin not running for re-election, opening blue state Senate seat. That's true. It's definitely one of the bluer states out there. Cardin has served 3 terms in the U.S. Senate. He's had a many decades-long career in Maryland politics. He's 79 years old. He'd be 80 by the time of the next election. So not a bad time to ride off into the sunset. So as we scroll through this article, this covers all the main highlights about which other seats are going to be in play next year and how it creates a vacuum for the Democrats, as there's a lot of politicians that are going to scramble for this seat in Maryland. So as for Cardin himself, he's a senator I don't really hear too much about. I think he's more distinguished, low-key, fairly respected enough to not really have much competition in his elections. As for his track record, I'm sure he's going to have some detractors and some enemies that think he's not progressive enough for being a Democrat in a blue state, but he's probably the right kind of fit for the Maryland electorate. Anyway, let's jump on Wikipedia here and take a look at that Senate election. So right now for the Democrats, we've got one candidate declared, Jerome Siegel. Down here we've got plenty of other candidates. John Cardin, that's the nephew of Ben Cardin. He's a potential candidate. But we've also got Tom Perez, Jamie Raskin, and John Sarbanes. There's some big names on here. I would expect nothing less than a very competitive primary. So we can take a look at that more over time as things develop, but I wanted to take a look at the Republican side. And I know the Republicans have almost no chance in this race, but let's see what we've got. We've got Robin Ficker. He's definitely a perennial candidate. He's already declared his candidacy, and that was before Ben Cardin announced he's not going to run for re-election. Potential candidates Andy Harris and Michael Steele. Steele is probably the kind of guy who could potentially make it competitive in Maryland. And also down here declined Larry Hogan. Now that's what I want to focus on. Hogan has declined, but again, that was prior to Cardin announcing his retirement. So he could always change his mind at any point. And now that it's an open seat, it would probably be the most enticing for Hogan if he ever wants to run for office again. I don't think he has a chance at president. He's already declined to run for that. So it's basically this, unless he wants to step down and run for the U.S. House. Or maybe he could do something crazy like move to Vermont, become governor after Phil Scott leaves, something like that. Because Larry Hogan, a lot of Republicans, especially outside of Maryland, consider Larry Hogan to be a rhino. He's just too light on a lot of the issues. Culturally, he does not excite the base whatsoever. All he seems to do is be a little bit of a check on the overwhelmingly Democratic legislator. He seems like a nice enough guy, but for him to win somewhere, it would have to be a perfect storm. He did it twice as governor. Very impressive, especially in 2018. That was a blue wave. And if Hogan does not run, then I'd say there's a 99% chance this would go toward the Democrats. If Hogan does run, I still think it would go toward the Democrats, but maybe it'd be more like 2-1 odds instead of 99-1. So let's take a look here at the 2018 map when Ben Cardin last won re-election. He got about 65% of the vote. Tony Campbell, whoever that is, got just over 30%. So the big counties here at Montgomery, Cardin's clearing 77%. Prince George's, he's over 90%. Baltimore County, he's at about 61. In the city, 87. And then the Republican strongholds out here on the Eastern Shore. The Republican Campbell, he's getting in the mid to high 50s. Some of these counties like Kent, Cardin is even winning. And over here on the Panhandle, the far west of Garrett County, that is the reddest county on here. The Republican got 71% of the vote. And that's practically rural Virginia out there. So Cardin wins by almost 35 points. How did Larry Hogan do in 2018? And remember, it's the same year. These two were on the ballot at the same time. 2018 was a blue wave. Both of them were incumbents. And Larry Hogan got over 55% of the vote. He won by about 12 points, which is really impressive considering it's such a blue state and the dynamics of the election. But take a look at these counties again. Here's Montgomery. Hogan lost it. But instead of losing it by almost 60 points, he only lost it by about 10 or 11. Prince George's County. Remember, Ben Cardin got about 90% of the vote. This time the Democrat Ben Jealous, he did about 20 points worse. Still a very impressive 71%. That's significantly worse, especially with all the population in that county. And look at this, Hogan even won Baltimore County, 61% of the vote. That's pretty much the exact opposite when Ben Cardin got 61% in the U.S. Senate. And then take a look at the red counties on the Eastern Shore. Hogan won all these counties by convincing fashion. Kent, he's in the 70s. He's in the mid-80s here in Queen Anne's. Very well done for Larry Hogan. Out here in Garrett County in the Western Panhandle, that went from about 71% all the way up to 86%. Close to a 15-point boost for Larry Hogan. So this gives you an idea what it would take for a Republican to win in Maryland. Now this is about a 12-point win for Hogan. He doesn't have to get these kinds of massive margins. I would think if any Republican were to win, they would just squeak by, sort of like how Hogan did in his first run in 2014. What would Hogan do if he actually ran for this seat? Well, he's well known, he was popular in Maryland, but the U.S. Senate is different than running for governor. I think at a national level, this is a very blue state. They're going to want a Democrat in there for the Senate. But Hogan, he's the only one remotely on the radar that could potentially have a chance. So I think if Hogan were to make a serious run at this, he could get it within 10. And if he has a great night, maybe it gets a little lower. Now, of course, that's against pretty much a generic Democrat. If it's a bad candidate, controversial candidate, then that's really the only way I could see Hogan pulling out a win. And still, that would be probably within low single digits. So this is not the kind of seat Republicans are going to want to sink money into. If Hogan wants to get a lot of establishment support and make a run at it, I'm sure Republicans would back him, because without Hogan, there's virtually no chance they could ever get this seat, and it would take the next once-in-a-generation Larry Hogan type of figure to put any statewide election back on the radar for the Republicans. So I think it would be fun to see what kind of margins Hogan could do. We'll see if he changes his mind, but as of now, this is going to be a safe seat for the Democrats. All the attention will be for that primary, but that's a look at this seat in Maryland and what it might take for a Republican to be able to win. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts about the Senate seat, and what do you think about Larry Hogan? You think there's a chance he runs? And how well do you think he could actually do? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next video.